Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Swedish on the home side, half Danish on the away side, and both of the breweries involved in this one featured on the channel several times before. Now when it comes to these breweries, I would say that the Swedish brewery are best known for their kind of lighter beers, their kind of slightly more sour golden ales. They've been doing a few more IPAs in recent times, whereas the Danish brewery are known for being very experimental and doing lots of different things, which is always quite interesting. But I've had great beers from both of them before, so I'm quite curious to see what this collaboration is going to have in store for us. So the beer itself is one of the Swedish brewery's latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden. It's a style that I very much enjoy, and one that does seem to be making a little bit of a comeback in recent times, which is certainly nice to see. So hopefully this is another good one. I'm very curious to try it. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for the home side of things then, we are going to head up towards Stockholm, the Swedish capital, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Stockholm Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Who Let the Pigs Out. It comes in at 6.8% ABV, it's a West Coast IPA, and this is brewed in collaboration with Warpigs Brewpub, who are from Copenhagen, over in Denmark. So yeah, this should be really interesting. This just kind of caught my eye because of the name, and then when I looked at it, it was a Warpigs collaboration, so I thought this would be really nice. And as I've always said, I love a good West Coast IPA, and I know that Warpigs can do some very nice ones. I think it's mainly New England I've had so far from Stockholm Brewing Company as well, so that's another point of interest with this review. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Stockholm Brewing Company and from Warpigs Brewpub. We will no doubt add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Just go up to the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and you will find this one in both the Swedish and the Danish playlists, and there are very many other playlists there from different countries as well. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and we'll tell you a little bit about Stockholm Brewing first, since these guys are the home brewery in this case. So Stockholm Brewing, as the name suggests, are based in Stockholm, and the company was founded back in 2012 by Niklas Jakobsson, Thomas Hallgren and Niklas Lenkel. So these guys were also apparently the first craft brewery in Sweden to open up a tasting bar at their brewery. Over the next few years they continued to expand and build up their recipe base and get their name out there a little bit more, but by 2016 they were brewing around 150,000 litres of beer, and the brewery was originally based in Söder in Stockholm, but they moved in 2018 to a new place in an old brick house at Frihamnen out to the east of the city, and they also have a restaurant there. But they had a collaboration with small farms, with a small farm outside of Stockholm, which was called Karshamra Trädgård, and a chunk of the things that they were using in the restaurant were from there, and it was Agnes and Maurits who were the farmers involved in the restaurant. But this restaurant business went bust, unfortunately, but they were working to reopen it, the last I heard. But the current brewer that they have is Mikkeller, who is assisted by Albin and Max. These guys also have Sweden's first commercial cool ship as well, so they've done many different kind of sour beers, which are always very interesting. That's probably what Stockholm Brewing Company are really known for, actually, the kind of sour and farmhouse beers. But they invested in 2 big fodders in 2019, and then in 2020 they invested in a 2,000 litre brew kit, which took up the brewery capacity quite considerably to 300,000 litres of beer per year. They were also affiliated with the company Wine Trade, which was run by Ollie Bartlett, but he has kind of moved now and is managing the brewery and the company of Stockholm Brewing. And as of April 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 240 different kinds of beer, and like I said, they are known mainly for their kind of lighter, more drinkable beers. A lot of kind of sours and saisons and stuff like this, but they release New England hazy IPAs every so often as well. I haven't actually ever seen any dark beers from from these guys, come to think of it. But I do need to try a few more of the Stockholm Brewing Company sours, because they're always pretty nice actually. So yeah, if you get the chance to try those, they are definitely worth having a look at. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Stockholm Brewing then. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on to the Danish side of things then. So, Warpigs Brewpub. So, Warpigs Brewpub was originally founded in 2015 and it's based in the old meatpacking district, Stockholm, in central Copenhagen, very close to the central railway station actually. But the company is a subsidiary of both Mikkeller and Three Floyds, and it's a brewpub and American barbecue restaurant combined, and the kitchen is currently run by Adrian Claudio Lazar. But for the first 2 years, the brewing team was led by Kyle Wolak, who was originally a dishwasher over at Three Floyds in the US, but he left in 2017 to go to Hill Farmstead, and then he was replaced by the Singaporean Lan Shin Fu, and she stayed with the company until 2019, at which point she was replaced by Chris Heiss, who I believe is German and is still in place today. But these guys have produced many, many different beers, because it is, it is a brew pub. They're very, very experimental, but a number of these have been released in cans as well, and some of them have also been replicated over in the US for release there. But Mikkeller itself was founded back in 2006 by Mikael Bjerg, they operated for many years as a gypsy brewery, brewing their beers mainly down in the Proefbrouwerij in Logistique near Ghent in Belgium, but also in a few other places as well, such as Dugges Brewery in Gothenburg and Brewdog just outside of Aberdeen in Scotland. But in 2016 they took over AleSmith's old brewery in San Diego, and then they opened another brewery the following year in New York. At the I forget the name of the field, but it was the home of the New York Mets, and then they opened their Bauhaus blender facility in Copenhagen as well. But they have shut all three of those facilities down, from what I understand, and they're kind of going back to the roots of gypsy brewing. Three Floyds, on the other hand, are based in Munster in Indiana, and they were founded back in 1996 by Mike Floyd and his two sons Nick and Simon, hence the name Three Floyds, and these guys are now producing around 10,000 US barrels of beer per year, and they've built a huge reputation for themselves across the country. So yeah, that's the history of the two companies behind Warpigs Brewpub. But it's a bit different now, because in November of 2021 it was announced that the partnership between Three Floyds and Mikkeller would end, and that Mikkeller would take control of the brand based in Copenhagen, and Three Floyds would take control of the American side of the business. So essentially they split it, and the two entities are now independent. So maybe we have to call this one Warpigs Copenhagen. But as of April 2023, the Warpigs Copenhagen branch have produced around 600 different kinds of beer, and yeah, it's definitely worth going and checking them out. Warpigs is one of my favourite places, and I would always recommend that you go and check it out. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about the Warpigs Brewpub in Copenhagen. If you want to learn more about these guys, again, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. So, as I mentioned earlier, this one comes in at 6.8% ABV. It's a West Coast IPA. This one you can see plain silver top on it, 440 millilitres there. This beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for April of 2023, and I believe that I paid about 50 Swedish kronor for this one. So that's about €5, about £4.50 sterling, somewhere in the region of like $5.50, $6 American, something like that. But yeah, the hops in this one apparently are Centennial and Idaho 7. I haven't had Idaho 7 too often in a West Coast IPA, so that's going to be quite interesting to see. But Centennial is one that was very often used, about 12% alpha acid American. It gives you this big lemony, citrusy character. Idaho 7, in my experience, is an interesting one too, about 14% alpha acid if I remember correctly, and in New England's that I've had Idaho 7, and it always gives you this really soft apricot-y and kind of juicy mango-y type note. So yeah, I'm curious to see what it does in the West Coast IPA. But yeah, 6.8% ABV this one. Let's get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. So let's do this. This does look nice, actually. I was looking forward to this one as soon as I got it home. But yeah, we'll put the rest in a wee bit later on after we've had a look at the aroma and the appearance. So, first off, before the head disappears on this one, you can see this beer's poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head, really kind of small bubbles there and a few bigger ones going up toward the bottom of the, going toward the top of the head there. But overall, it does look very, very nice. Yeah, colour of this beer, I have to say, if I shine the natural light through it, it's quite a bright amber, but I think to you guys it's appearing a little bit darker on the camera there. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrelation that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour as well. But when it comes to IPAs, you don't often have to care about that, actually. But yeah, this is one of the more kind of ambery leaning West Coast IPAs I can say I've come across. It's got a little bit of natural haze to it, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But you can see the head has just kind of faded away to be a slightly thinner foamy layer, and everything seems to go together quite nicely in this one. I have to say, I do like that about this. But as I've always said, for me there are two different kinds of West Coast IPAs, or two ways they can lean, I guess is a more accurate way to say it. They can be a little bit more kind of bready and biscuity, such as the they can be a little bit more bready and biscuity, such as the you know, for example, Pliny the Elder from Russian River Brewing Company, or they can be a little bit more kind of caramelly and orangey. So, or they can be a little bit more caramelly and oily, I should say, not orangey, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. And those are two of the kind of the benchmarks for me. Those are two of the first ones that I kind of came across from the States, you know, where the OG place where the West Coast IPA comes from. So yeah, this one I think is maybe going to be a little bit more kind of caramelly and oily, just going by the colour. So we'll need to see. And it's a Simpson's malt that's in this one, from what I understand. But yeah, appearance-wise, nothing overly surprising about this beer. Let's just take a wee look at the aroma then and see what it's all about. So yeah. Yeah. Aroma-wise, this is pretty nice. Yeah. A little bit different to what we've had from other West Coast IPAs in recent times, but I'm not going to complain. So yeah, in terms of the yeah, in terms of the kind of backbone with this beer, you can smell there's a lovely sort of fresh, there's a lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust there forming the backbone of this one. This beer gives you kind of everything you would want. It's got a nice kind of bit of hoppy dankness to it, it's got a bit of oily fruit, and then it's also got a kind of bready character to it. Yeah, it does smell a little bit more like a European brewed West Coast IPA for sure than an American one. I think the American malts just smell a wee bit different to the European malts, actually. I think many of the ones that we get in Sweden here are of course brewed with German malt, but yeah, it's another thing. But aroma-wise, this is nice. The more that I smell of it as well, the more sweetness I get out of the beer too. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, absolutely, a little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. You can smell that it's a little bit grainy. On top of that, there's a little bit more of on top of that, there's a wee bit more of a kind of wholemeal. Yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of fresh brown bready bread crust in there. On top of that, you have a little bit of a kind of, there is a little bit of a kind of crackery note in there, but then you start to get a wee bit of like a wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one. Maybe just a little touch of woodiness too. So yeah, bread crusty character for sure. On top of that, yeah, you've got that bread crusty backbone. On top of that, you have the on top of that, you've got a little bit of cracker, a little bit of wood, then you start to get the wholemeal brown bready note, and then you start to get the white bready characters out of this one. So there's a wee bit of like an oily sweet caramel in there for sure, which is very common with this style. So oily sweet caramel. Certainly a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity element to it as well. And then, yeah, on top of that, you do have actually, you can smell, yeah, the oily caramels there, the McVitie's digestive biscuit. And then, yeah, there's a wee tiny bit of like a toasty caramel in this one as well. But yeah, I think this beer definitely develops more and more sweetness the further into the aftertaste, or the further into the aftertaste. I'm using all the wrong words today. The further into the aroma that you delve. But yeah, this is quite nice. I will say straight away as well, before we talk about the hoppy side of things, you can smell the Centennial jumping out of this one at you. It's very distinctive, I have to say. But yeah, green component of this beer then. There's a teeny little bit of earthiness in this one, but you have that really nice... yeah, there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in this one, but you have that really nice kind of big floral aromatic sort of thing with it. So big floral aromatic notes to it, also some kind of zesty grassy character too, and yeah, the way that that goes together is really quite interesting. Yeah, big kind of floral aromatic notes, good zesty grassiness in there. Most of that's going to come from the Centennial. I suspect that the Centennial has probably been used as the early edition hop in this one. So remember, 3 types of hoppings in your IPAs: early edition, late edition, and dry hopping. Early edition, first hour of your wort boil, gives you mainly bitterness. Late edition, last half hour of your wort boil, gives you a bit of bitterness but mainly flavour aroma. Dry hopping after the wort boil is complete, all about the that's all about the flavour and aroma. So yeah, the West Coast IPAs use all 3. Yeah, West Coast IPAs use all 3. And you know, New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2, which is why West Coast IPAs have like a deeper and danker aroma. So yeah, yeah, yeah. The way that this goes together in that sense is quite nice. Yeah, lovely kind of bright floral aromaticity, zesty grassiness in there. Yeah. That's quite nice, yeah. I like the brightness and the kind of zestiness of the green component. Big floral aromaticity, as I said, but quite a little bit of zesty grassiness. Behind that, of course, you have a lot of zesty lemony character in this one from the Centennial. A really interesting hop that I haven't had it in a very long time, actually. But yeah, on top of that, you can smell there is a wee bit of tropical fruit in this one. It's got a wee bit more kind of like, there is a bit of like a ripe mango in there, and a little bit of a kind of juicier passion fruit or something, maybe a little bit of the apricot, but it's the lemony notes that dominate for me. I think the Idaho 7 is certainly taking a bit of a back seat to the Centennial, but again, I suspect that's because Centennial has been used as the bittering hop in this one. But aroma-wise, this is a really kind of interesting beer, I would say, actually. Yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it, but I think it's about time that we taste this beer and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Who Let the Pigs Out, a 6.8% West Coast IPA from Stockholm Brewing Company here in Sweden, and then brewed in collaboration with Warpigs Brewpub from over in Copenhagen in Denmark. Closer to me actually than Stockholm. So let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, this is interesting, actually. So, first impression of this beer, it gives you a lot of bitterness in the beginning. Big, kind of bitey floral aromaticity to this one, which I do quite like. The maltiness takes a little bit of time to come out as well. It gives you a little bit more of a kind of grainy, yeasty kind of thing, which is, to be honest, that is something I would kind of expect from Stockholm Brewing. These guys are really good at, like I say, the kind of farmhousey, wild ale type things. And they're just lighter, more sessionable beers generally. But then, yeah, you start to get a bit more sweetness out of it. You get the kind of oily fruits. It is an interesting West Coast IPA, this one. Definitely more leaning toward the bready side of things, actually. So, yeah. Really cool. And I think this is the first West Coast IPA that I've had from Stockholm Brewing as well. But it's good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is pretty damn nice. So yeah, let's kind of break this beer down and describe it a little bit more in depth, as we've done many times before. This beer, it does build up in sweetness the more you drink of it as well. So, middle third of your palate then, you can feel the backbone of this beer. You've got a lovely little bit of a kind of, that kind of fresh brown bready bread crust in this one. That kind of forms the backbone of the beer. I said white bread in the aroma, but to me it's definitely more of a kind of brown bready character that comes out of this one. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is pretty nice. So yeah, fresh brown bready bread crust in there. You've got a little bit more of a, I would say, yeah, you've definitely got a little bit of a more kind of wholemeal brown bready bread crust in this one. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woody character pushing its way out of the beer. And yeah, you have a touch of the more yeah, so you've got the bread crusty notes in there, you've got a little bit of woody character, then above that there's a wee touch of like a Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. I seem to be getting a lot of cracker out of beers these days, but you have to remember your palate is always evolving. But above that, you've got more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character, which I do quite like. So yeah, wholemeal brown bready sort of thing, which sits there, and that graininess actually comes out of the beer quite far into the aftertaste. I do quite like that. But then above that, you're also getting the kind of the white bready character too, which is nice. Yeah. So. The white bready notes in this one are actually quite sweet, I find, which is interesting. So yeah, nice little bit of that sweeter white bready character in there, and then above that you get a little bit of the kind of sweeter side of the malt base as well. So you can feel there's a tiny, the brown sugary notes in this one are kind of in layers. It's almost like you've got a circle in the middle of your palate. So you can feel the base layer of that circle. It's a little bit more like a kind of toasty brown sugar. Then you've got a little bit of a kind of leathery, there's a little touch of a leathery sort of brown sugar to this one as well. So you get a little bit of a slightly leathery brown sugar in there. Usually leathery brown sugars are a bit of an indicator of a slightly longer wort boil, but there's certainly a wee bit of that going on in this one. Above that, you get a bit more kind of oily caramel coming out of the beer, which is nice. So you get the straight up sweet caramel there as well, and then above everything, like you've got this kind of little bit of biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity type character. So yeah, I really like how that goes together for sure. Yeah, the way this goes together is really quite nice actually. I have to say that, the way everything kind of pieces together is pretty cool. So yeah, interesting stuff. I really like how this how all of this pieces together. So yeah, the malty base in this one is really nice, and like I say, this one's got a bit more breadiness to it, such as some of the German West Coast IPAs that I've tried. But it's also got a good little bit of the kind of oily sweetness to it that you'd expect of the West Coast IPA. So this is interesting too. Yeah. For me, this is quite nice. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate in this beer. So on the back third of your palate, then the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of white bready build up in there, and you can feel the base of that back third of your palate is a little bit more. It has a little bit more of a kind of grainy character to it. As I've always said, the more bitter and dry flavours come out further back on the palate, the sweeter flavours tend to come out further forward. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of roasty, toasty Yeah, you do have that nice kind of more roasty, toasty, bread crusty character on the back third of the palate. You can feel a slightly drier cracker above that, and then you have the more, and then above that you start to get like a kind of wholemeal brown bready note, and above all of that you start to get the more, the kind of, yeah, above all of that you get more, kind of, you do get a little bit more sort of the white bready character. So the wholemeal brown bready layer is a little bit more kind of tall and airy, and the white bready layer as well. So that's worth bearing in mind. So yeah, that's in there. And you also have a little bit of a more, in there you've also got a little bit more of a kind of, above everything else you've got a little bit of a more kind of yeasty layer coming out of the beer as well. So the yeasty notes are a little bit more, you've got a little bit more of this kind of, you've got a little bit of this more kind of farmhousey, kind of, yeah, like, yes, like sort of farmhousey, bready type note out of this one. So it's got a little bit of a kind of, I would say there's a little bit of a kind of honeycomb note in there as well. I always get honeycomb in coming out of these beers for some reason. So you have a little bit of a kind of honeycomb bready sort of layer. You've also got a wee bit of a more, I would say, just like a really grainy, farmhousey, kind of white bready note to it as well. So yeah, that sits above everything else in there, but you can certainly feel the flavour on the back third of your palate is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate, it kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that works is quite nice actually. In terms of I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer then. So in terms of the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, you've absolutely got a little bit of a kind of earthiness coming out of this one, so that lingers there too. So yeah, a little bit of earthiness there, but as you come further forward you get this big, deep, dank, kind of pine resiny, kind of pine needly type note, but it does develop to be a little bit of a more kind of bright and pardon me, spicy floral aromaticity the further into the aftertaste that you go, so you can feel that there. But round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is distinctly lighter and more grassy, and it's got a bit more zestiness to it as well. Not quite as much as I thought it was going to have from the aroma, right enough, but still a significant little bit of kind of zestiness to the beer. And I would say that overall, the green component in this one is very, the green component in this one really is quite zesty. So yeah, I like that. Gets a big thumbs up from me. In terms of the fruity side of the beer, then let's look at the front third of your palate. I think we said everything we need to about the green component. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in this one, so it's like a mix of white and brown bread in there. The base of that front third of your palate, it has a little bit more, the base of that front third of your palate, it's got a little bit more of a kind of brown bready character to it. Again, you've got a smoother brown bready note in there and a bit of white bread above that. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at the fruity side of things in this beer. It's kind of straightforward in some ways, but in other ways it's not. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer for me in this case is, it's got a little bit of a more kind of oily, there's a little touch of a kind of like very slight grapefruit to this one at the back of that front third of your palate, but as you move further forward it develops to be a little bit more of a kind of oily mango type flavour, and as you reach the middle of the front third of your palate it's a little bit more like an oily pineapple. So the Idaho 7 in this one is really showing you a lot more of a kind of oily character for sure. There's maybe a little touch of dried apricot underneath that kind of, just underneath that in the middle of the front third of your palate too, and then as you reach the front third of your palate, it's all about the big kind of oily, lemony notes coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together is really quite nice. I do like how everything kind of just pieces together in this one. It's got a lovely blend. It's really quite a citrusy leaning IPA, this one, with just a little bit of like dry tropical fruit in the background, like in the after. Sorry about the edit there, guys, just something strange happened with the camera. Happens sometimes. But yeah, as I was saying with this one, like, with the last thing to say about the fruity side of this beer would be that just, you know, as you go further into it, you get a little bit of a kind of sort of almost oily pear and sultana-like character coming out of the beer. So yeah, I would say that's the last thing to say about the fruity side of this one. Oily, kind of zesty, lemony notes, and yeah, kind of grapefruity, mango, pineapple, and sort of apricot note. But then yeah, more and more kind of sultana and peary notes coming out of this one the further into the aftertaste you go. But yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer I would say is kind of, it's pushing to the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is really quite smooth. The mouthfeel is very sort of oily, and yeah, and I mean that's what you want from the West Coast IPAs, but it's got a little bit of an almost like dry oiliness to it as well, which I think is quite interesting. So yeah, a little bit of a dry, oily kind of character to this one. The IBUs in this beer, I suspect this is maybe up around like 70 or 80 IBUs. This one certainly feels a little bit more bitter the further into the aftertaste that you go. But then yeah, you've got this nice kind of dry, graininess underneath. You've got a smooth breadiness in the middle. Then you've got a more kind of brown sugary character to this beer that also has a little bit of dryness to it in itself. Then these big oily fruity notes, a little bit of tropical character, but really leaning toward a more oily kind of citrusy, zesty type thing. So yeah, I think that kind of summarises up the mouthfeel of this one. Quite oily and kind of pushing toward the top end of mid-bodied. But it gets a big thumbs up from me actually. I've really enjoyed reviewing this one for you, and it's cool to see Stockholm Brewing do something a bit different, and also to see something from Warpigs as well that I know these guys can do very, very well. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been the Who Let the Pigs Out 6.8% West Coast IPA from Stockholm Brewing here in Sweden, and Warpigs Brewpub over in Skjudbøjen in Copenhagen in Denmark. Always cool to visit both of these breweries, and cool to see them do their first collaboration together. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both breweries as well, and we will no doubt return to them again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slange, Skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social medias, and I'll see you guys very, very soon.